Ethan Preston in Spokane, Washington.
Oh, Spokane.
Yeah. I said I didn't know anybody who was listening in Spokane who I didn't actually know personally. But in fact, Ethan and his family is listening. I'm a tipped employee in Washington State. I recently discovered an article detailing the history of tipping. I've noticed that there are numerous discussions on why tipping is more common in businesses and the general distaste for, quote, flipping the iPad to ask for a tip. My questions are, will this evolution of tipping culture lead to a change in how tips are regulated by the government, both state and federal? Is tipping a practice going to continue as it is now? Or will the various economic pressures force people to lower the amount they tip at the places they frequent, regardless of the quality of service? I would sum this up as, am I going to make less money?
Yeah.
As the tipping culture changes.
As the tipping culture changes. So, well, there's a lot in here, but the history that Ethan is referring to is encapsulated by a New York Times column written by an author. And it's the title, I mean, spoiler alert here, the title is Tipping is a Legacy of Slavery. And the author goes through her first person journey of kind of slowly coming to the realization that as a Black woman, her wage is now dependent on pleasing white men that she's serving. And that they have like, her and her fellow servers, including one who's white, are like, you don't go to that table, I'll go to that table. And she starts to kind of become aware of this and then looks up the history that tipping was a way to keep Black people in certain fields subservient and reliant on the kind of beneficence of their masters. Beneficence? No,
I think the first way.
Yeah. So tipping definitely comes from slavery in the United States. The culture that we've arrived at now, has legacies like if you're part of a group that's broadly discriminated against and you're relying on tips, that makes your life a lot harder and your wage a lot lower. But I don't know how the evolution of tipping culture would change if the U.S. got rid of the tipped minimum wage. I don't know if anybody does. There's been certain cities have gotten rid of the tipped minimum. States have raised the tipped minimum, and restaurants have responded with things like, putting on their menu, we don't accept tips because we pay our workers more and that's reflected in prices, and trying to educate the public about how pricing works or things like that. I think it's not a settled question.
Yeah, that's happening all over in restaurants in Los Angeles. You find, restaurants, and it always surprises you. You get a bill and there's no place for a tip, and it's got a whole short essay about that they've built service pricing in, and they actually don't put it in the prices of food. They itemize service prices, the price of service.
Yeah, and they can do it however they want as long as they're honest on the receipt. So they can say that it's reflecting higher food prices, or it's, here's a service charge that we add to not have to rely on tips. Now, so we don't know how that'll change culturally. What I think is interesting for tipping as a practice is that there was an incredible case. It came out in the pandemic, it was either in 20 or 21, of just how much Amazon was stealing the tips of its drivers. So this is a culture where if someone is delivering something to me from Whole Foods, then I'm going to put a tip on them because it's the pandemic and I didn't have to go to the grocery store. I'm trying to recognize that maybe their wages aren't high enough. And Amazon was skimming their tips and taking a share of them. And they had to pay, one guy had to pay back $60,000. Wild how much money Amazon took from the workers that were tipping. And they're not the only company that had settlements or accusations of this. And so I wonder how much the flipping the iPad will go away as more court cases are successfully brought for you flip the iPad and I don't get it. Mm-hmm. And so I think their culture will change in a couple directions and we don't foresee it. I think if we had really good FTC and consumer protection laws, and good worker laws.
I say this sounds like a worker protection law. Yeah.
But I think they're more, they come in on justice, but it might be more as consumer manipulation. I think I'm paying for a tip, but you're actually taking the money. So you're taking my money as a consumer. That might be easier to prove than taking the worker's money.
Then wage. Would it be wage theft?
It
If
would be
it wasn't
wage
a wage?
theft.
Okay, would be.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think those are two questions. One of them that policy could have enormous influence on is regulating that the tips that are now kind of asked for in a more broad way are actually given to the person versus like how high tipping industries like restaurants would respond.